It's time for City Beat, your source for all the latest news on the city of Thompson. Only on 102.9 CHTM, your radio station.
Good morning and welcome to City Beat on this rainy June 29th. My name is Stuart Walter and my guest this morning is Mayor Dennis Fenske. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, there's been two presentations on the Thompson 2020 project recently, one at the Chamber of Commerce and the other at City Council. The Master Charter was adopted by Council at the last meeting, and despite a lack of attendees, there was a public meeting earlier this week regarding the project. Now that the project has officially launched, what's the next step?
Well, basically, there's a lot of work being done by the project managers, Tim Gibson and Harold Smith, on the 4 buckets of work, which is basically looking at the employees affected by the shutdown of Birch Tree and the switch to mine mill operations at Valet. And so that's one bucket. The second bucket of work is retaining retirees, not only Valet, but all retirees in our community. Third bucket of work is the expansion and growth of existing or new businesses. And the fourth is a regional one in perspective of connectivity in regards to broadband and all-weather roads to the region. So all of those things are in motion at the same time. There's a number of initiatives being worked on. For example, in the retiree retention one, we're working with the province of Manitoba in regards to developing cottage lots at the north and south end of Paint Lake to encourage people to retire here as well. And there's a number of initiatives that are going on from the city's perspective. We started out with, in regards to the business retention and growth, reduced the business tax in the 2017 budget. We also brought in the accommodation tax allocation of $200,000 to the Hotel Association to increase bed nights in our community. And also we're bringing forth a third reading of the tax abatement bylaw to assist those in tax relief for new business or existing businesses that own property to expand or renovate their facilities.
Now, what's the importance of the Master Charter being adopted by Council?
Basically, it's the outline, the mandate of the committee and the staff to work towards. It's clear, it's measurable, and keeps you on track as you go into this process.
Now, you and I were there, along with Paul here from Shaw, as was most of Council, but only a few people showed up to the public meeting. Other than what you just talked about, going over again what Thompson 2020 the goals are, was there anything else that was going to be covered at the meeting?
Well, I think basically the intent was the meeting, and we'll go over it again on July 17th at the City Council meeting as well, but it was just basically to get into people into the framework of the I know conversations rather than the I think conversations. We know that Birch Tree is going to care and maintenance October 1st. We know that the mine mill operation and the closure of the smelter refinery will happen in August of 2017. So those are things that we know, and we need to understand the impacts of those, and that's the reason Thompson 2020 exists, and a lot of other agencies are working hard to mitigate those impacts. So as we go through that, we want to get people into the I know conversation, so they're making decisions that affect themselves based on fact rather than conversations or I think conversations. So that's the intent moving forward, and we're going to try and get out as much information as we get it to allow people to make proper decisions.
Moving on from Thompson 2020, you were not here last week because you were in Winnipeg with Gary Sepatelli, the city manager, for the Look North MBiz breakfast and meetings with provincial ministers. What happened during the MBiz breakfast meeting, and did any of what was discussed surprise you at all?
Not really surprising. The Manitoba Chamber of Commerce hosted the business dinner. It was the last one or business breakfast. It was the last one of the season. They'll reconvene in the fall. North Central Development was a core sponsor as well, and there was a discussion or presentation in regards to the Look North initiative in regards to developing an economic strategy for the North. There was lots of talk about Churchill. There was Tourism Manitoba showed 3 commercials that are running right now in the media in regards to attracting people to Churchill. There was some discussion in regards to the current situation and how to mitigate the loss of the rail in getting tourists to Winnipeg. To Churchill. They're still open for business, and there are processes into place right now to get people there so they can enjoy the upcoming beluga season and in the fall polar bear season.
Now, you were also down there to meet with provincial ministers. Who did you meet with, and what was discussed?
We met with Minister Cullen as a follow-up to a previous meeting we had a couple weeks previous, just to talk about, again, Thompson 2020 and moving forward in discussions with the province and what role they can play in the mining reserve fund that is available, and what the amounts that are available to, again, mitigate the impact of the announcements of Birch Tree and the mine mill operation in August of next year. Secondly, we met with Minister Stephenson, Minister of Justice. Joining us for that meeting was Chief Marcel Moody from Nelson House. We talked about the restorative justice facility and the need for that facility in the north. We also talked about the CSOs, and I can announce today, I just got the call this morning that the Minister and the Cabinet signed off on the CSO legislation yesterday in Cabinet, so our CSO officers are back in full standing as of noon today, and so we'll be out and about for Canada Day and moving forward with full responsibilities that the legislation provides for us.
And just to follow up to that one, is there been any further discussion about the funding for the CSOs? Is that going to be split, or is it still the city footing the bill?
At this point, we are paying 100% moving forward to the end of the year. We are in negotiations with the province to extend the pilot program that was concluded on May 24th with a 50-50 cost sharing, and we'll work towards gaining that again.
Now, this is an issue that stemmed from City Council. There seemed to be some confusion from some councillors, and it's spread to the general public about the money that's been redirected towards the extra money needed to complete the canopy project for McLean Park. And as far as I understand it, it was explained to me it has to go to a project like that, and it couldn't go to something else. Could you clear up the issue?
Sure. Again, there is confusion that was brought forth by a couple of councillors, which, again, as you stated, added to somewhat confusion in the general public in regards to the project and the funding. Let me start by saying that the project that was brought forth was discussed in the 2017 budget, was approved by all of council at the $50,000 range. And then since the new tenders have gone out and come back, the pricing is in the $85,000 range. There's an additional need for funding in the $30,000 to $40,000 range. That was brought forth to council, and so this is a capital project. It's not an operating project, so it's a capital project which is funded by either gas tax revenues from federal government or grants from the province of Manitoba or other grant opportunities. So to make up the shortfall, it was presented to council to take funds that will be underexpended in another capital project, which is what you can do. You can move capital from within capital projects to other projects, and so there's an under expenditure in one project that will cover the tender that was received for the canopy, and so it's just a movement of monies from one project to another. There is zero impact on the taxpayer of Thompson, as it was alluded to. There was not $700,000 spent on McLean Park, as was alluded to by Councillor. We're in the $430,000 range. Plus, there was grants obtained from the federal government as well. And McLean Park is a feature that we celebrate as recent as Aboriginal Days on June 21st. We celebrated in that facility with 1,000+ people throughout the day. It's well used throughout the summer with concerts in the park. There's been many other events used within that, so it's a well-used facility, and I certainly promote the use of that by all community members, and it adds to the quality of life that we have in our community.
Moving on, there's a lot of events coming up. First, let's talk about one that happened last night, R.D. Parker graduation. You spoke at the ceremony last night, but I think we should also just take this time again to congratulate those who have now graduated from high school here in Thompson.
Absolutely. 162 graduates. That's a great number. It's up from last year, as Principal Rob Fisher has noted. So congratulations to all the grads. There was safe grad last night as well, so hopefully everybody survived and were safe throughout the evening. It's a really good event, making sure that everybody stays safe safe and responsible for the evening. But along with the event, there were a number of guest speakers. I just want to give a shout out to Jason Lucas. His speech was very motivating. He's a fine example of a business person, of a First Nation person that has succeeded, has had to work hard. He admittedly up front said there was a lot of hurdles in getting his artwork and business going, but he overcame them, he faced them, and as he said, he had nine no's and the next yes, and then he moved on to the next 9 no's and another yes, and he's a very successful artist. No one, certainly in our community and across Canada, and most recently spending time in England as well. So big shout out to Jason Lucas for his comments to the grad class of 2017.
Now, one of the biggest events all across the country every year is Canada Day, which is Saturday, but this year it's even bigger than usual.
Absolutely. Canada Day, we're celebrating 150 years, but I also want to recognize that as we mentioned in all of our greetings, that we are located in Treaty 5 traditional lands of the NCN First Nation and also of the Métis peoples as well. And so we need to recognize that although Confederation is 150 years old, that First Nations and Métis people were here for thousands of years before that. And so we want to celebrate that as well. As far as the event itself, as you mentioned, it's a lot going on. Starts 9 o'clock at the C.A. Nesbitt and VRCC grounds. Food vendors will be available. Starts with a pancake breakfast Saturday morning, followed by a number of events. The opening ceremonies are at 11:30 in the C.A. Nesbitt Arena. A number of stage events: Folklorama, Playland, Hot Dog Lunch, Diamond Dance Academy, Aurora Dance Academy, Rubber Space Guy, Folklorama again, teen races, fire show, and then finally what everybody waits for is the fireworks at 11 p.m. So it's a full day. I understand from the weatherman he's going to cooperate with us, and it's going to change later this afternoon. I'm thinking that you guys are in charge of that, so I'll make sure you'll deliver. And so we look forward to everybody coming out on Saturday to Canada Day.
Coming up next week is the $1 Million Hole-in-One, and that's an event that's been going on for a bit of time here in Thompson, but it's also a very important event for causes throughout the city.
Absolutely, and big shout out to the Rotary Club for their sponsorship of that event. And this year, monies will be allocated to the Manitoba Games. It'll be hosted March 4th to the 10th here in Thompson, and so all of the volunteers of the Rotary Club and other volunteers that step up, it's a great opportunity to mix and mingle with fellow golfers and non-golfers. It's basically the lucky shot of the day type of thing, but encourage everyone to come out, and it's for a really good cause. So every time you hit a ball, you're donating money to these causes that help our community grow. So big shout out to the Rotarians and all of the volunteers that help put this on.
And I believe there's a few other events that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, a couple, specifically the Heritage North Museum tomorrow at 2 o'clock will announce the naming of the Hazel Hopkins Library within the facility. And so you can drop down to the Heritage North Museum at 2 o'clock. And also the Northern Daycare is celebrating 30 years. They're located on Copper Road, and I'll be there to present them with a certificate as well.
Now, it is construction season. So there are a few things going on throughout the city that have inconvenienced some people a tiny bit, but as happens with all construction that goes on, no matter where you are. The big one, though, is the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, and if you were out there around there this morning, you'll notice an oversized crane has been moved into place. Again, this is a roughly $36 million project that will take a year and a half to build. It's the wastewater treatment plant for the city of Thompson, and it is a construction zone, so I know people are curious, but it is fenced off, so please obey the signs that are there, avoid the area when large vehicles are around, and encourage kids to stay away from the construction site as well. I know it's curiosity and things like that, but can be a dangerous site as well.
Now, what's the latest on the roads?
Road repairs, so a couple things. We continue to do patching for potholes, but the capital job, which is undergoing in the Beaver, Staghorn, Deerwood area, is continuing on. That's with the water main renewal project, and so there are disruptions of traffic disruptions to local traffic only, so please, unless you have to be in the area, please avoid the area. And again, there's lots of equipment around. There's kids in the area, especially this week with school. And so be aware of kids in and around the streets, but just be cautious. And if you don't have to be in the area, please avoid the area for the next 3 weeks.
And finally, is there any update on the Norplex pool?
Yeah, we're working again with our supplier for the heating controls. The technician is flying in on July 4th. We're unable to get to the water temperature we need to be, which is normally around 82, 83 degrees. We can get to about 70, and so that's a little bit chilly, and so we don't want to open without getting into the high 70s. So that'll be another 3 or 4 days before our technician is here and working through the computer programs to make sure that we can get the heaters going and staying on for the duration that we need them.
Well, thank you so much for joining me this morning, Mayor Fenske.
Thank you.
If you have any questions you'd like answered 2 weeks from now, as we won't have City Beat next week, please email them in advance to CHTMnews@arcticradio.ca. For City Beat here on 102.9 CHTM, I'm Stuart Walter.
City